Okay, so we've been getting a lot of questions, a lot of feedback about this, and it seems like a good time to really kind of dig in. We're talking about cats specifically, cat owners. The bane of many a cat owner's existence, house soiling. And we've touched on it a little bit here and there, talking about cats, but I think it's time that we do a deep dive. And we've got a ton of sources. People have sent us a lot of articles, advice. We've got some
like
VCA animal hospitals, Cornell University, always a great source of information. The Spruce Pets, PetMD, even some Reddit threads, people sharing their experiences, their frustrations, even a clip from Animal Planet's My Cat from Hell. So
that's a good one.
We're going to try to unpack all of this and maybe give some strategies and things to think about if this is happening in your house, if this is something that you're dealing with. And it seems like, I mean, it's the #1 behavioral complaint from cat owners. So if you're going through this, you're not alone.
Definitely not. No. A lot of cat owners struggle with this. And I think it's good to remind yourself of that when you're in the thick of it, because it can be really upsetting, and frustrating, of course. But it's important to try to remember that this behavior is usually a sign that something else is going on. That on the surface you see the pee or the poop outside the box, but underneath there could be a whole bunch of different things contributing to that. So it's important to keep that in mind for your own sake. For your cat's sake. Right.
And we are, to be clear, we're talking about urination outside the litter box, defecation outside the litter box, and even spraying or marking.
Yeah, all of it. All of it falls under that umbrella of house soiling. And even though there might be some differences in what's going on underneath, we're talking about basically, your cat's eliminating in a place where you don't want them to. And that's the bottom line.
Right. So where do we even begin with this? This is kind of a big topic.
It is, yeah. I mean, the good thing is that there's a lot of good information out there.
Yeah.
And all of the sources that we looked at really emphasized one really important first step, which is if your cat's doing this, if you're noticing this behavior, the first thing you have to do is rule out medical causes. Because it might seem obvious, but sometimes the cat's just not feeling good, and that's the first way that they'll show you that something's wrong. Maybe they're not showing other symptoms; they're just all of a sudden they start going outside the box. That's a signal to get them checked out by a vet.
Yeah, and I mean, what kind of health issues are we talking about here that could cause this?
Well, so many things. I mean, when you think about urinary issues, they can get stones or crystals in their bladder, bacterial infections, different kinds of inflammatory diseases of the urinary tract. All of those things are going to make them uncomfortable. It's going to cause pain when they urinate.
Yeah.
It can also create this like really strong urge to go all the time. So, imagine if you felt like that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to use the bathroom either, if it was associated with pain or constant urgency.
Right. I mean, it would make you start to avoid it.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, aside from the lower urinary tract issues, we also have to think about, diseases of other organs like the kidneys and the liver.
Yeah.
Kidney disease and liver disease can both lead to increased thirst, and that can lead to increased urination. So that might be another reason why a cat's going outside the box. It's not necessarily that they don't want to use the box. They're just peeing more often.
Yeah.
And so that's something that your vet would be able to investigate for you.
Right. And it's not just, the younger cats, right?
Right.
I mean, older cats go through stuff too.
Definitely. Yeah. As cats get older, they can develop age-related cognitive decline, which is basically like dementia in cats. It's kind of like Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And just like people with those diseases, their brain function changes. Their memory is not what it used to be. They might not be aware of where they are.
Yeah.
And that can definitely affect their elimination habits.
Yeah. So if you've got an older cat and all of a sudden they're having accidents, it's not necessarily just them being old, right? Something could be going on.
Right. It's a good idea to get them checked out just to make sure.
Yeah. And I mean, we're focusing a lot on the urination.
Yeah.
But what about, stool-related issues can also...
Of course. Yeah. Anything that's causing them pain or discomfort when they're trying to defecate, anything that affects their bowel control, or even things that increase the frequency of their bowel movements, like if they have diarrhea, for example.
Yeah.
So we're talking about things like, colitis, constipation, even problems with their anal sacs can make them uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's a lot to kind of consider.
It is. It is. And then we also have to think about their physical capabilities, right? So, if a cat has arthritis or nerve problems or muscle weakness, joint issues, anything that makes it hard for them to get to the litter box, get in the litter box, get in a comfortable position.
Yeah.
All of those things can contribute to soiling outside the box.
Yeah. Just makes you realize how much is going on with your pet that you might not.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of these medical conditions that we're talking about, they can sometimes be the very first sign that something's wrong.
Right.
So, as a cat owner, you might not notice anything else until all of a sudden they're peeing outside the box. And then that's when you take them to the vet and you find out that they have, kidney disease or...
Yeah. And I mean, we were looking at some of the Reddit threads that people had sent us, and there were a lot of stories about people who thought it was a behavioral issue.
Yeah.
They tried all these different things, and then it turned out to be a UTI or kidney problems.
Right.
Somebody was mentioning that their cat had cystitis, which was actually triggered by anxiety.
Oh,
so it was kind of this
combination of things. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So,
but it's it highlights how important it is to take that first step of going to the vet. And then even, what some people in the Reddit threads were saying was sometimes it takes getting a second opinion.
Right.
If
something doesn't feel right.
Yeah. If something doesn't feel right, or if, you've tried one thing and it hasn't worked, it's always okay to get a second opinion.
Yeah. And I mean, another thing to consider is some of these metabolic diseases that we talked about, like diabetes, liver disease, hyperthyroidism, kidney disease.
Yeah.
Some of those can actually cause so much increase in urine production that it can seem like
incontinence.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Right. So first step, vet.
Okay.
Rule out medical.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's say you've done that. You've taken your cat to the vet. They've gotten a clean bill of health.
Yeah. All right.
Where do we go from there?
So then we have to start thinking about behavioral reasons.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there's no medical explanation for why your cat's going outside the box, then we need to think about, well, what might be making them avoid the box, or what might be making them prefer to go in other places. Okay. And that's where it gets a little more complicated, I think.
Yeah. Because, I mean, cat behavior can be so subtle and nuanced.
Totally.
Wow.
So we have to think about things like aversions,
Okay.
Litter aversion. So maybe your cat just doesn't like the litter that you're using.
Yeah.
It could be the smell. Some litters have perfumes added to them. Some cats hate that. It could be the texture of the litter. Maybe it's too rough on their paws, or, maybe it doesn't feel good to them when they dig in it.
Yeah.
So there's litter aversion, and then there's litter box aversion.
Okay.
So this is where they don't like the box itself. It could be that the box is too small. Maybe they can't turn around in it comfortably.
Right.
Maybe it's covered and they feel like the smells are trapped inside. Or maybe it's just not clean enough. Maybe you're not scooping it often enough, or, so there's different things about the box itself.
So to be clear, litter aversion is the stuff in it.
Right.
Box aversion is the actual container.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's location aversion.
Okay.
So maybe they don't like where the box is. Maybe it's in a high traffic area. Yeah. Maybe it's near something that makes a lot of noise, like, a washing machine or a dryer.
Right.
Maybe it's in a place where they don't feel safe.
Yeah. All those pictures on the internet of cats hanging out in sinks. I mean.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That, it might seem cute, but it could be a sign that they're seeking out a different location for elimination.
Right. And then, I mean, kind of on the other side of those aversions, there's also preferences, right?
Yes.
Like substrate preferences and location preferences.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So your cat might develop a preference for a particular type of surface in your house. Yeah. Like, maybe they really like the feel of carpet. And so they start peeing on the carpet.
Yeah.
Or maybe they like the feel of a tile or even a bathtub, It's cool and smooth.
Right.
And then there's location preferences. So maybe they just prefer to go in a certain spot in the house. Maybe it's a quiet corner or maybe it's under a bed.
Yeah. And then there's that whole category of of stress and frustration.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, cats are creatures of habit. They like routine. And so anything that disrupts their routine can cause them stress. And that can manifest in all sorts of ways, including house soiling.
What kind of, for someone at home, what kind of changes are we talking about that could cause them stress?
Yeah, so many things, I mean, it could be something as obvious as a new pet coming into the house, or a new baby,
right?
Or a new person moving in.
Yeah.
It could be something like rearranging the furniture, moving to a new house. Even if the owner goes away on a trip and comes back, that can be stressful for a cat. And then there's social stress, Yeah. So if you have multiple cats in the house and they're not getting along, that can be a huge stressor.
Right. So that that seemingly random pee spot on the rug after you've had guests over,
right?
Maybe not so random.
Maybe not so random.
Yeah.
And then they're spraying.
Right. Yeah. So we have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Which is also known as urine marking. And this is a territorial behavior. And it's more common in cats who aren't spayed or neutered.
Right.
But neutered cats can do it too. Especially, if they're in a multi-cat household, or if they're feeling stressed or insecure about their territory.
So how do you know if your cat is just peeing outside the box or if it's spraying?
Well, so there's a difference in the posture.
Okay.
When they're spraying, they'll back up to a vertical surface. So like a wall or a door or even a piece of furniture, and they'll raise their tail. You might even see the tail kind of twitching or quivering.
Yeah.
And then they'll kind of tread with their back feet, and they direct a stream of urine backwards. And it's usually a smaller amount of urine than when they're actually, emptying their bladder.
Right.
And it's really about depositing scent. That's the main purpose of spraying. It's marking their territory.
Take a do not enter sign.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, this is mine.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to note that, stool is very rarely, if ever, used for marking.
Right.
It's almost always urine. Yeah. And we were talking about that clip from My Cat from Hell.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that cat, Henry, that was a classic example of that kind of spraying behavior.
Classic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Henry, he started spraying after his family moved from a house with a yard to a smaller condo. So essentially his territory got smaller.
Right.
And he felt stressed about that,
Yeah.
He felt insecure. And then on top of that, they had this neighbor cat, Isabel, who kept coming right up to their front door, which just added to his anxiety.
Right. And he would just spray at the front door.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was a really good illustration of how external factors can play a role in this behavior.
Right. And I mean, stress in general can even change their their physiology, right? Like they can produce more urine. And...
Yeah, it can make their urine more dilute. It can make them need to pee more often.
Yeah.
So that can contribute to accidents.
Right. So it's like this kind of cascading effect.
Totally.
Yeah. So okay. So we've ruled out medical. We're thinking about behavioral. But how do you even begin to narrow down what it is with your cat?
Well, that's where you have to become a detective.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to really do a thorough behavioral history. So you need to think about your cat's daily life, their environment, their routine.
Right.
You have to think about what kind of litter box are you using? What kind of litter are you using? How often are you cleaning it?
Right.
Where is it located in the house? And then when did this behavior start? How often is it happening? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it staying the same?
I mean, you're almost like keeping a journal or a log of it.
It's a great idea. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, you want to think about any recent changes in the household. Like, did you get a new pet? Did someone new move in? Did you renovate? Did you even just rearrange the furniture?
Right.
Have there been changes in your routine?
Yeah.
Like your work schedule, anything like that. And then are there any patterns to the elimination?
Yeah.
So is it happening at a certain time of day? Is it happening on certain days of the week? Is it seasonal?
Right.
And then pay attention to how your cat interacts with the other animals and people in your home. Are there any signs of conflict or tension?
And you mentioned earlier how many litter boxes you have and where they're placed.
Yeah.
Especially if you have more than one cat. I mean, that's
so important. So important. Yeah. So the general rule of thumb is 1 + 1.
Go.
So 1 box per cat plus 1 extra. And this is really to minimize any competition for resources, to make sure that all of your cats have a place to go where they feel comfortable. And then placement is huge. The boxes should be in quiet locations where the cats feel safe. They shouldn't be in high traffic areas where they're going to get startled. It's best to keep them away from food and water bowls.
Right.
And if you have a multi-level house, try to have at least 1 box on each level.
What if your cat's still, using a litter box some of the time? I mean, does that tell you anything?
It does. I mean, you want to pay attention to when they're using it successfully and when they're not.
Yeah.
What's the context? And then also the details of the inappropriate elimination are important. So is it urine? Is it stool? Is it both? Are they going on horizontal surfaces like the floor?
Right.
Or are you finding urine on vertical surfaces like walls or furniture? Which, could suggest spraying.
Right.
What kinds of surfaces are they choosing? Are they going on soft things? Are they going on hard things? Are they going on textured things?
Right. And I remember reading something about, actually washing them when they're going to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's a great tip. It's a little creepy, but it can be really helpful. You want to observe their behavior. So are they squatting normally to urinate? Or are they doing that spraying posture that we talked about? Do they seem uncomfortable? Do they seem painful?
Right.
Do they attempt to bury their waste? Even if they're not in the box, even if they're going right next to the box, are they still trying to bury it?
Right.
So all those little details can be helpful.
Yeah. Now, what about, let's say you've got more than one cat. How do you even figure out which one's the culprit?
Yeah, that can be tricky.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things you can do. There are these non-toxic stains that you can give to each cat orally, and then their urine will show up under black light.
Oh, wow.
So that can help you pinpoint who's doing it. And then for stool, you can actually use like a little piece of a non-toxic crayon, a child's crayon, and you just feed a little bit of that to each cat, and then the color will show up in their feces. So yeah, you can get creative to figure out who's who.
So all right, so you've done all your detective work. Hopefully you've got some ideas of what's going on. What are some basic steps you can take at home to try to address this?
So start with the basics. I mean, if you've made any recent changes, like if you switched litter types or you moved the litter box, try going back to the old way.
Okay.
Experiment with different types of litter. A lot of cats prefer clumping litter. A lot of cats prefer unscented litter. So experiment with that.
Okay.
And make sure you're cleaning any soiled areas really, really thoroughly with an enzyme-based cleaner. And it's important to avoid using ammonia or vinegar-based cleaners because the scent of ammonia is actually a component of cat urine.
Right.
And so it can attract them back to that spot.
Right. And you mentioned the 1 + 1 rule earlier.
Yeah, 1 + 1.
Can you kind of go over that again just so everyone's clear on what?
Sure. So the 1 + 1 rule is basically you want to have 1 more litter box than the number of cats you have. So if you have 2 cats, you should have 3 litter boxes.
Right.
And you want to put them in at least 2 different locations in the house. And it's a good idea to think about putting a litter box in any area where your cat's been having accidents.
Okay.
And then regular maintenance is key.
Yeah.
So scoop the box every day, change out the litter at least once a week.
Okay.
And if you're doing all of that and the problem's still persisting, then it's time to maybe think about some other options, some other treatments.
So really the goal of all of this is to try to make the litter box as appealing as possible.
Yes.
And the places where they've been going as unappealing as possible.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. So, you want to experiment with different types of litter, different locations. You can even experiment with different types of litter boxes.
Right.
And when you're not able to supervise your cat, it can be helpful to confine them to a smaller area where you have a really nice litter box set up.
Yeah.
And where they haven't been soiling.
Okay.
And then, it never hurts to go back to the basics
of
litter box training.
Yeah, even if you think
even if you think they're trained. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the litter box itself, like making that more attractive. What are some things you can do there?
So if your litter box is old, even if you clean it regularly, it might have absorbed odors over time. So consider replacing it with a brand new one. The type of box can also make a difference. So a lot of people like covered boxes. But a lot of cats actually prefer uncovered boxes.
Okay.
You know, the covered boxes can trap odors, and some cats just don't like that.
Yeah.
And they can also make a cat feel trapped, especially if you have multiple cats.
Right.
And one cat might be waiting to ambush the other one when it comes out of the box.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then for larger cats or older cats, uncovered boxes are also usually better because they're easier to get into and out of.
Yeah.
So, you know, accessibility is a big thing, especially for senior cats or cats with any kind of mobility issues.
Yeah. Make it easy for them.
Make it easy for them. Yeah. And then location. You know, the litter box should be in a quiet spot where the cat feels safe.